Welcome. My name is Daniel Hartwell, and for a very long time, I believed my life was ordinary, in the safest way possible. Not perfect, not dramatic, just stable. I lived in a quiet residential pocket of Surrey, the kind of place where neighbors nodded politely but rarely asked questions, where life moved forward on schedules and routines rather than surprises. I worked in medical administration, nothing glamorous but reliable. My evenings were predictable: dinner by 7, a series on television, bed before midnight. And at the center of everything was my husband, Dr. Oliver Hartwell, a respected gynecologist. Well liked, trusted. People used to smile when they learned what he did for a living. "You must feel so safe," they'd say, "having a husband who understands women's health." I used to smile back. I didn't know then how ironic those words were. For 15 years, Oliver was the person I leaned on when I was scared, the one who reassured me when my body felt unfamiliar, the one who explained away every discomfort with calm authority and soft certainty. And for 15 years, I never once questioned him, until my body started screaming that something was wrong. It began quietly, almost politely. A dull ache low in my abdomen that appeared at random times, never sharp enough to demand attention, never gentle enough to ignore completely. At first, I told myself it was stress. Work had been heavy, sleep had been poor, life happened. But then the ache turned into spasms, sharp, sudden, crippling. The first time it truly hit me, I was standing in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. Without warming, the pain clenched deep inside me, folding me forward as if someone had punched me from the inside. I dropped the knife. I had to brace myself against the counter, breathing slowly, carefully, waiting for it to pass. Oliver looked up from his phone. "Emily?" he asked calmly. "You all right?" I nodded, forcing a smile through clenched teeth. "Just a cramp," I said. He crossed the kitchen, placed a hand on my back, warm and steady. "You've been pushing yourself," he said. "Your hormones are changing. It's normal at your age." At your age. The phrase stung, but I trusted him. He was the doctor. Over the next few weeks, the spasms came more often, in the shower, in the car. Once, humiliatingly, in the middle of a supermarket aisle, I had to grip the trolley while strangers pretended not to stare as I bent forward, breathing like a woman in labor. My menstrual cycle unraveled. Bleeding became heavy, then erratic. Some months it barely arrived. Others, it came with such force I felt dizzy just standing up. Fatigue settled into my bones like a permanent weight. I stopped accepting invitations. I planned my days around proximity to bathrooms and chairs. And every time I told Oliver, he reassured me. "Perimenopause," he said. "Inflammation," he said. "Stress," he said. He prescribed medication, hormonal pills, anti-inflammatory suppositories, pain relief that dulled the edge but never touched the source. "Your body's adjusting," he told me one night, brushing my hair back gently. "Trust me." So I did. But somewhere deep inside me, a quiet voice began to whisper, "This doesn't feel right." The whisper grew louder the night the pain woke me from sleep. It was nearly 3 in the morning. The room was dark, silent except for Oliver's slow breathing beside me. Then the pain struck, sudden and vicious, radiating through my lower abdomen like fire. I gasped, clamping a hand over my mouth to keep from crying out. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to pass. It didn't. After nearly 10 minutes, I slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me like I was hiding something shameful. I sat on the cold tile floor, back against the bathtub, hugging my knees and breathing through waves of pain. When it finally eased, I looked at the reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized myself. Pale. Tired. afraid. The next morning, I told Oliver everything. He listened, nodded, didn't interrupt. Then he smiled, the same calm, confident smile he used with patients. "Emily," he said gently, "you're worrying yourself unnecessarily. I see this every day. Bodies change." I wanted to believe him, but something inside me resisted. 2 weeks later, Oliver told me he needed to travel. "My mother's unwell," he said, standing in the doorway with his coat already on. "Atlanta. I'll be gone a few days." I kissed his cheek, concerned, supportive. "Call me when you land," I said. "He will," he promised. When the door closed behind him, the house felt different. Too quiet, too empty. And that whisper inside me turned into a voice I could no longer ignore. I booked the appointment that afternoon. I didn't tell Oliver. I told myself it was just a second opinion, something sensible, responsible. But the truth was, I felt guilty, like I was betraying him by doubting his word. The medical center was modern and spotless, all glass and muted colors. Dr. Jonathan Reed greeted me with a firm handshake and kind eyes. He listened. Really listened. He didn't rush me, didn't dismiss anything. He asked questions, careful ones, about the timing, the intensity, the progression. Then he said, "Let's take a look." The ultrasound room was quiet except for the hum of equipment. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, trying to keep my breathing steady. At first, everything seemed normal. Then Dr. Reed went silent. Not the casual silence of concentration, the heavy silence of someone seeing something unexpected. He adjusted the sensor. Once, twice, 3 times. His jaw tightened. My heart began to pound. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question that landed like a stone in my stomach. "Who has been treating you up until now?" "My husband," I said. "He's a gynecologist, too." Dr. Reed stopped moving. Slowly, deliberately, he set the probe down and removed his gloves. "I need you to have immediate lab work," he said carefully. "What I'm seeing shouldn't be there." The room felt suddenly cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me and pointed to an irregular dark shape embedded deep within the image. "This appears to be a foreign object," he said. "By its shape and position, it resembles an intrauterine device." I stared at the screen, then at him. "That's impossible," I said. "I've never had an IUD." His eyes met mine, steady and serious. "I believe you," he said, "but it's there." That was the moment my life began to fall apart. I didn't move for a few seconds. I stayed there on the examination bed, staring at the screen like if I blinked hard enough, the shape would dissolve into something harmless, a shadow, a glitch, a misread. But Dr. Jonathan Reed didn't look like a man who was guessing. He looked like a man who'd just stepped on something sharp in the dark and was trying to keep his voice steady so I wouldn't panic. "IUDs don't just appear," I said, my voice thin and wrong in my own ears. "No," he replied quietly, "they don't." He turned the monitor slightly again, zooming in. The dark structure remained, stubborn and unmistakable. "You said your husband has been treating you for 5 years. Has he ever mentioned inserting anything? Any procedures, any implants, any contraception methods besides pills?" "No," I said quickly. "Never. I've always been frightened of IUDs. He knows that." Dr. Reed's eyes narrowed, not at me, at the reality. He reached for my file and flicked through the pages. "There's no documentation of insertion. which is unusual because even if your husband did it privately, a responsible clinician would note it somewhere. The word responsible landed like a small insult to a marriage I'd been defending in my mind for months. I sat up slowly, the paper sheet rustling beneath me, and my hands began to shake. Could it be something else? A growth? A fibroid? I don't know, something that looks like an IUD? Dr. Reed didn't answer immediately. He reached for the keyboard, tapped a few keys, and pulled up a comparative image on the monitor, an outline of an older IUD style. Then he pointed. The shape matches, and the tissue around it. He paused, as if deciding how honest to be. The tissue around it looks angry. I swallowed. Angry? Inflamed, he corrected gently. Chronic inflammation. That's why you're in pain, Emily. That's why your bleeding is erratic. Your body has been fighting something that doesn't belong there for a long time. A long time. I stared at the screen again, and a sick thought came creeping in. How long has it been inside me? My mind tried to leap around the question, like a cat avoiding a puddle. Dr. Reed stood, already moving toward the door. I want blood work now. Full panel. Inflammatory markers, tumor markers, the lot. I don't want to waste time. As he left, I caught my reflection in the glossy cabinet door, eyes wide, face pale, lips parted like I'd been slapped. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. I was afraid of the answer. Not just the medical answer, the human one. Because there were only two possibilities. Either this was a freak mistake from my past, or someone had put it there. Someone who had access. Someone I trusted. The nurse who came in with the tray was young, professional, quiet. She asked me to confirm my name and date of birth, tied the tourniquet around my arm, and began preparing the needle. Her hands were steady, but her eyes weren't. They kept flicking toward the door, as if she was waiting for something, or dreading it. When Dr. Reed returned, she handed him a small slip of paper, fast test results, and I saw the way his expression tightened before he mastered it again. He didn't look at me right away. He looked at the paper, then at her, and the nurse gave the smallest shake of her head, like a silent warning. Then she left, and I was alone with him. Dr. Reed sat across from me and folded his hands neatly on the desk. "Emily," he said, voice low, "your inflammatory markers are extremely elevated." I stared. What does that mean? "It means your body is reacting strongly to something," he said. "Usually infection, chronic irritation, or tissue damage. In your case, with what we saw, it's consistent with long-term foreign body inflammation." My heart hammered. "So, surgery?" "Yes," he replied. "Immediate referral. You need hospitalization today. This cannot wait." My mouth went dry again. Today? My brain felt like it was falling behind reality, trying to catch up while everything moved too fast. "I have to call my husband," I said automatically, reaching for my phone. Dr. Reed's gaze sharpened. "You can," he said carefully, "but before you do, I want you to hear this from me clearly." He leaned forward slightly. "If this device was placed in you without consent, that is not only unethical, it's criminal. And because the tissue changes around it are concerning, I strongly recommend you contact law enforcement." Law enforcement. Again that phrase. Again that wrongness. Like the words didn't belong in the same room as my body. I stared at him, struggling to speak. "You're telling me," my voice cracked, "you're telling me someone could have done this to me?" Dr. Reed didn't flinch. "I'm telling you the object didn't get there on its own, and the fact there's no record makes it more concerning, not less." He slid a referral form toward me and wrote quickly on it, his handwriting sharp and decisive. "County General, Gynecological surgery team. You're going now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now." My hands were trembling as I took the paper. I wanted to stand up and walk out and pretend I'd never come. But my body, my Tane, was proof I couldn't. The drive to the hospital felt unreal. The overhead road was normal. People stopped at red lights. A cyclist pedaled calmly beside traffic. Someone carried a coffee cup like the world wasn't splitting open in my chest. And yet my hands on the steering wheel felt like they belonged to someone else. At a junction, my phone buzzed. Oliver. For a second, the sight of his name gave me a strange relief, like the problem had an obvious solution now. I answered with shaking fingers. "Hi," I said, forcing steadiness. "How's your mom?" There was a pause. Then Oliver's voice, smooth and warm, like always. "She's stable. Long day. How are you, Em?" I swallowed hard. "I went to see an outside doctor," I blurted. Silence. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of a man calculating. "You what?" he asked, voice still soft, but now edged with something else. I couldn't take the pain anymore. I just wanted a second opinion. Another pause. "Emily," he said, still calm, "you don't need outsiders interfering. You're overthinking it." My throat tightened. "He did an ultrasound," I said. Another silence. And then Oliver laughed lightly. A little chuckle, like I'd misread a calendar. "Ultrasounds can show all sorts of oddities. It's nothing." My chest tightened so suddenly it felt like I couldn't breathe. "He says there's something inside me," I whispered. The line went quiet, and for a terrifying moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then Oliver spoke again. What exactly did he say? His tone was different now. No warmth, just precision, like a man trying not to show his hand. "He says it looks like an IUD, Oliver, but I've never had one." His voice remained steady, too steady. "That's impossible. You're mistaken. I'm going to the hospital. He said it's urgent." A beat. Then Oliver's tone softened again, sliding back into husband mode. "Emily, listen to me," he said. "Hospitals rush people into unnecessary procedures. Let me see you when I get back. I'll review everything properly." I felt anger flicker through my fear. "Back when?" I snapped before I could stop myself. "You're in Atlanta. That could be days." "Emily," he said, and now I heard it, the warning under the tenderness. "Stop. You're panicking." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. "I'm not panicking," I said. "I'm listening to my body for the first time, and it's telling me something is wrong." Another pause. Then he said, flatly, "Fine. Do what you want." And the line went dead. He hung up on me. Oliver Hartwell, my calm, caring husband, hung up on me. I stared at the phone for a second, stunned. Then I drove faster. County General was a blur of fluorescent light, paperwork, and clipped voices. They admitted me quickly, probably because Dr. Reed's referral was written like an alarm bell. Blood tests, IV line, pre-op questions, consent forms I barely read because my hands wouldn't stop trembling. In a small waiting bay, a surgeon introduced himself. Mr. Malcolm Hayes, consultant gynecologist. In the UK, that Mr. meant he was senior, highly trained, surgical. He didn't smile much. He didn't waste words. "Mr. Emily Hartwell," he said, scanning my notes. "We're removing the foreign object. We'll also sample tissue around it for pathology. Do you understand?" "Pathology?" I repeated, voice thin. "It's precautionary," he said, "but the imaging suggests chronic inflammation. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing. "Will it hurt?" I asked, and hated myself for how small the question sounded. He looked at me, not unkindly. "You'll be asleep," he said, "but you need to understand, embedded objects can cause significant damage. We'll do everything we can." I nodded, and suddenly, without warning, my eyes filled. Not just from fear, from betrayal. Because as they wheeled me toward theater, one thought kept pounding in my head. How did this happen without me knowing? And behind that thought, like a shadow I couldn't turn away from, Oliver knows. The operating theater smelled like cold metal and antiseptic. Bright lights, masked faces, machines beeping like a countdown. An anesthetist leaned over me, voice gentle. "Count backwards from 10, he said. My mouth was dry. 9, 8, my vision blurred. 7, and then the world went black. When I surfaced, it felt like swimming upward through thick water. Sound returned first, muffled voices, distant footsteps, the soft beep of monitors. Then light, then pain, dull, deep, heavy. I tried to move, and a wave of weakness rolled over me. A nurse noticed. "You're okay," she said quickly. "You're in recovery. Surgery went well." My throat felt raw. "Did they remove it?" She nodded. "You'll speak with the surgeon soon." Minutes later, maybe hours, Mr. Hayes appeared beside my bed. His face was serious in a way that made my stomach twist. "The operation was successful," he said. Relief hit me first. Then he continued, "But what we removed raises serious concerns." He held up a clear container. Inside was the IUD. Blackened, old. Its arms looked sharper than they should have, like teeth. I stared at it, unable to speak. Mr. Hayes' voice was controlled. "This is a Seraph IUD," he said. "They were banned years ago due to cancer risk." I felt a cold shock sweep through me. "How long has it been there?" I whispered. He didn't sugarcoat. "Years," he said. "Likely close to a decade based on embedding. It was fused into tissue." I stared at the container, and something in me cracked. I whispered, almost to myself, "I never agreed to this." Mr. Hayes' eyes sharpened. "There's a serial number," he said. "N3847. We'll trace it." Trace it? Like a weapon. Like evidence. My mind raced, trying to find any explanation that didn't end in my husband's hands, but there weren't many. A few hours later, a woman walked into my room wearing a dark suit and an expression that didn't belong in a hospital. She introduced herself with a clipped professionalism that made my skin prickle. "Detective Naomi Clark," she said. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Hartwell." I stared at her. My mouth went dry again. She pulled a small recorder from her pocket and placed it gently on the bedside table. "We have reason to believe this may involve a criminal offense," she said. "I need to ask you some questions." The room felt suddenly smaller. My heart began to race. Detective Clark's eyes didn't leave mine. "When was the last time you were under general anesthesia?" she asked. I swallowed hard. 8 years ago?" I whispered. "Appendix surgery? And where was that performed?" I hesitated, then said it. "My husband's clinic." The detective's pen paused. "And was your husband present?" I could hear Oliver's voice in my head from that time. Proud, controlling, confident. "I'll supervise everything myself." "Yes," I said, barely audible. He insisted. Detective Clark's face didn't change, but the air in the room did. "Emily," she said quietly, "inserting an IUD without consent is a serious offense. Using a banned device with known carcinogenic risk elevates it further." My throat tightened. "Are you saying Oliver?" She didn't finish the sentence for me. She didn't need to, because the truth had already started forming inside me like a bruise. And just as the detective reached for her next question, my phone buzzed again. A text from Oliver. "Stop letting strangers scare you. We will talk when I'm back." I stared at the screen. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm coming home." Not, "What hospital are you in?" Just control. And in that moment, lying there with stitches inside my body, the container with the blackened IUD sitting on my bedside table like a cursed relic, I understood something terrifying. Oliver wasn't surprised. Oliver wasn't worried. Oliver was managing the situation, managing me, the way he always had. I lay there long after Detective Clark finished her initial questions, staring at the ceiling as if the answers might be written in the cracks. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and plastic. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor became the only thing tethering me to the present. My body felt hollowed out, lighter without the foreign object, heavier with what its removal implied. 8 years. 8 years of pain, of doubt, of being told I was imagining things, and 8 years since the appendectomy Oliver had insisted on overseeing himself. The container with the IUD sat on the bedside table like a silent accusation. I couldn't stop looking at it. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured it inside me, metal arms biting into tissue, slowly poisoning me while I trusted the man who put it there. A nurse came in quietly to check my vitals. "You've been through a lot," she said softly. "Try to rest." I nodded, but rest was impossible. My mind kept replaying Oliver's voice from earlier that day. "Stop letting strangers scare you." And the way he'd hung up on me without a second thought. Strangers. The word burned. Dr. Reed wasn't a stranger. Mr. Hayes wasn't a stranger. Even Detective Clark wasn't a stranger anymore. But the man I'd slept beside for 15 years? He suddenly felt like one. A few hours later, Mr. Hayes returned with a folder under his arm. He didn't sit down. That was never a good sign. "We've completed an initial review of the tissue samples," he said. "Full pathology will take longer, but I want to be transparent with you." My chest tightened. "There are atypical cellular changes," he continued, "consistent with stage 3 dysplasia." The word stage echoed in my head. "So, pre-cancer?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "If this had gone undetected much longer, we would likely be having a very different conversation." My fingers curled into the bedsheet. "And this," I said hoarsely, nodding toward the container, "caused it?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." The certainty in his voice shattered any remaining illusion I'd been clinging to. "You were fortunate," he added quietly. "Another year or two, and the outcome could have been life-threatening." Fortunate? I almost laughed. Mr. Hayes placed the folder down and met my eyes. "I know this is difficult," he said, "but you did the right thing coming in when you did." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. After he left, the weight of his words settled over me like a suffocating blanket. Another year or two. Oliver hadn't just stolen my health, he'd been gambling with my life. That night, sleep came in fragments. I drifted in and out, jolted awake by pain or memories or fear. Each time I surfaced, the IUD container was still there, solid and real, reminding me this wasn't a nightmare. At one point, I reached for my phone again. Against my better judgment, I dialed Oliver's number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then someone answered. "Hello?" a voice said, sharp with irritation. My heart stopped. Is Oliver there?" I asked slowly. A pause. "Who is this?" she demanded. "I'm his wife," I said. Silence. Then a sigh. "He's busy," she said curtly. "He's with a patient." I heard a faint male laugh in the background. Oliver's laugh. Something inside me collapsed. "I need to speak to him," I said. "It's urgent." The woman scoffed. "He said not to disturb him. Whatever this is, it can wait." And then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, numb. It wasn't just that another woman had answered. It was the ease with which she'd dismissed me, the familiarity in her tone, as if she belonged there. The next morning, Detective Clark returned. this time with a different energy. She carried a tablet instead of a notebook, and there was a sharp focus in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "We traced the serial number," she said without preamble. My heart thudded painfully. "The IUD removed from your body, N3847, was officially logged as disposed of 8 years ago." I swallowed. "Where?" "At Hartwell Women's Health. Your husband's practice." The room seemed to tilt. "It was marked as defective and scheduled for destruction, signed off personally by Dr. Oliver Hartwell." The words landed like blows. "So, instead of destroying it," I whispered, "he used it?" Detective Clark nodded grimly. "We've already requested the full disposal logs. We're also preparing to question staff members who worked at the clinic at the time of your appendectomy." A slow, sick realization dawned. "He couldn't have done this alone," I said. "Someone would have seen something." "Possibly," she agreed, "or they trusted him enough not to question it." That hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. Trust. The same thing I'd given him freely. Detective Clark hesitated, then added, "There's something else." My chest tightened. "We reviewed your husband's recent travel records," she said. "There's no evidence he's in Atlanta." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" "He never boarded the flight," she said, "and there's no record of his mother being admitted to any hospital there." The room went very quiet. "So where is he?" I whispered. Detective Clark's expression hardened. "That's what we're about to fight him out." I was discharged 2 days later. Physically, I was weak but stable. Emotionally, I felt like I was walking around without skin. Detective Clark advised me not to confront Oliver yet, but she also knew I might not listen. She gave me permission to access his clinic under supervision to identify documents and spaces that might help the investigation. When I walked into Hartwell Women's Health, the place I'd once been proud of, it felt alien. The reception staff smiled automatically, then froze when they recognized me. "Mrs. Hartwell," one of them said awkwardly, "we weren't expecting." "I know. Neither was I replied calmly. Oliver's door was closed. I walked straight to it. The lock clicked open easily. Inside, everything was immaculate. The heavy oak desk, the leather chair, framed diplomas lining the wall, a photograph of us in Hawaii smiling under the sun like nothing was wrong. I opened the safe. The code, our wedding date, still worked. Inside were folders labeled by year. My hands shook as I flipped through them. And then I found it. March 15th. Disposal log. IUD N3847. Signed in Oliver's handwriting. Behind me, the door creaked. I turned to see a young woman standing there, in a white coat. Sophie Lane. She went pale when she saw the folder in my hands. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said, voice trembling, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied quietly. She tried to hide something behind her back, but I'd already seen it. A pregnancy test. And on her finger, a ring. Gold. Diamond. Identical to mine. My stomach dropped. "That's a beautiful ring," I said softly. "Where did you get it?" Sophie's eyes darted away. "It was a gift," she whispered. "A gift from my husband?" I asked. She flinched. Before she could answer, a voice echoed down the corridor. "Sophie, thank you again for helping me with the paperwork." A visibly pregnant woman approached, smiling warmly. "If it weren't for Dr. Hartwell, I don't know how we'd manage. He's helping me find a bigger place for the kids." Kids. Plural. Sophie went rigid. The woman noticed me then and frowned politely. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had company." "It's fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. The woman left, still smiling. I turned back to Sophie. "How many?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, tears spilling over. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He told me you were infertile from birth, that doctors said you couldn't have children." My knees nearly gave out. "He said he'd divorce you," she continued, sobbing. "He said you were sick. I swear I didn't know he did this to you." "How many?" I repeated. She hesitated, then whispered, "2." The room spun. While I'd been lying awake at night in pain, Oliver had been building another family, raising the children he'd taken from me. At that moment, I understood the motive. He hadn't just wanted children. He'd wanted them without me. My phone buzzed. "Detective Clark, I found evidence on Oliver's computer," I said when I answered. "Messages, financial transfers. He planned this." Her voice sharpened. "Don't touch anything else. We're getting a warrant." "I think he's coming home," I said suddenly. "How do you know?" "Because he always comes home when he thinks he's losing control." The front door opened behind me. I turned, and there he was, Oliver Hartwell, smiling, holding a bouquet of red roses. "Honey," he said, "I thought we should talk." His eyes dropped to the folder in my hands. The smile vanished. For a second, none of us moved. Oliver stood in the doorway of his office, roses clutched in his hand like a prop from a play that had suddenly lost its script. His eyes flicked from my face to the folder in my hands, then to Sophie, who stood frozen near the wall, tears streaking her cheeks. The smell of flowers felt obscene in that moment. "Emily," he said carefully, as if choosing each syllable like a surgeon choosing where to cut. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at him. Really looked. The familiar details were all there. The neat hair, the expensive watch, the posture of a man used to authority and respect. But now, underneath it, I saw something else. Calculation, fear, anger barely held in check. I held up the folder. "March 15th, I said quietly. 8 years ago. IUD N3847, logged as disposed of. Signed by you." His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be going through my professional records. That's confidential material." The word confidential made something twist violently in my chest. "Confidential?" I repeated. "You put a banned carcinogenic device inside my body without my consent, and you're worried about confidentiality?" Sophie let out a small, broken sound behind me. Oliver shot her a sharp look. "Sophie, leave us." She didn't move. "Leave," he repeated, louder now. She shook her head, tears spilling freely. "No, not anymore." His gaze snapped back to me, fury flashing across his face before he smoothed it away again. "Emily," he said, softening his tone, stepping toward me, "you're not well right now. You've been through surgery, anesthesia, stress. You're misinterpreting things." I laughed then. It came out harsh and hollow. "Misinterpreting?" I said. "I saw the IUD. I saw the serial number. I saw the messages. I saw your other family." The roses slipped from his hand and hit the floor, petals scattering across the carpet like drops of blood. For the first time since I'd known him, Oliver looked truly panicked. "You went through my computer?" he demanded. "Yes," I said, "and I read what you wrote." His eyes flicked briefly to Sophie, then back to me. "That was private correspondence," he said weakly. "You called it solving the problem? You called it giving her a little gift during the appendectomy? Do you know what that gift did to me?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. I took a step toward him. "For 8 years, I trusted you. I trusted you when I was in pain. I trusted you when you told me I was imagining things. I trusted you with my body." My hand tightened around the folder. "I stole my choice. I stole my health, and you almost stole my life." Oliver's expression hardened. "You're exaggerating. It was a precaution." "A precaution? Against what?" Me getting pregnant? His silence told me everything. You didn't want children with me, I said slowly. You wanted them with her. Sophie sobbed openly now. He said you couldn't have children. He said you were sick. I turned to her. I wasn't sick, I said gently. He made me sick. Oliver slammed his hand down on the desk. That's enough, he shouted. Both of you. The sound echoed down the corridor, and then footsteps answered it. Detective Clark's voice cut through the tension, calm and authoritative. Dr. Oliver Hartwell, she said, entering the office with 2 uniformed officers behind her. You're under arrest on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm. Oliver turned, eyes wide. This is a mistake, he said quickly. I'm a respected clinician. This is a domestic dispute, nothing more. Detective Clark held up a folder. We have medical records, disposal logs, forensic analysis, and witness testimony, she said. We also have digital correspondence in which you admit to deliberately inserting a banned device into your wife during surgery. Oliver's face drained of color. You can't prove intent, he said hoarsely. We don't need to, she replied coolly. You documented it yourself. The officers stepped forward. Oliver looked at me then, really looked at me, as if searching for something. Mercy, perhaps, or the woman he thought he controlled. Emily, he said, voice cracking, please, we can fix this. I'll get you the best treatment. I'll explain everything. I felt nothing. No, I said. You already explained. The handcuffs clicked closed around his wrists. Sophie cried out as he was led past her. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't know. I swear. Detective Clark turned to her. You'll need to come with us as well, she said gently. You're a key witness. Sophie nodded numbly. As they escorted Oliver out, he turned one last time. This will ruin us, he said desperately. Think about what you're doing. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I am, I said, for the first time. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the office felt empty. The investigation unfolded quickly after that. Oliver's computer revealed everything. Years of messages, financial transfers to Sophie, insurance policies for the children, plans laid out in chilling detail. He'd even discussed waiting until my condition worsened so he could divorce me without complications. The pathology reports confirmed the damage. The experts testified that the Seraph IUD's prolonged presence had directly caused my precancerous condition. The medical board suspended Oliver immediately. The press had a heyday. A trusted doctor's betrayal, a wife poisoned from within. I tried not to read the headlines. The trial came 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, colleagues, strangers who wanted to witness the downfall of a man who'd once been admired. Sophie testified first. She spoke haltingly, voice breaking, as she described how Oliver had lied to her, how he promised marriage, how he painted me as an obstacle rather than a human being. Then Dr. Reed took the stand, explaining how the ultrasound findings had raised immediate red flags. Mr. Hayes displayed the IUD in its sealed container, explaining to the jury why such devices had been banned. When it was my turn, I stood slowly, hands shaking, but heart steady. I loved him, I said simply, and he used that love as a weapon. The courtroom was silent. I blamed myself for my pain. I blamed my age, my body. All the while, he knew the truth. Oliver didn't look at me. The verdict came quickly. Guilty. 7 years in prison. Medical license permanently revoked. Compensation ordered. As Oliver was led away, I felt no triumph, only relief. A year later, my life looked very different. The regular checkups showed improvement. The precancerous changes had stabilized. My body was healing. And my heart, slowly, was learning how to trust again. I adopted a little girl named Lily, who'd lost her parents in an accident. She filled the quiet spaces in my home with laughter and questions and hope. And Dr. Reed, Jonathan, remained in my life too. Not as a rescuer, but as someone who had listened when something felt wrong. Standing in my kitchen one evening, watching Lily draw at the table, I realized something profound. My story hadn't ended when my marriage did. It had begun. The courtroom emptied slowly after the verdict, like people leaving a theater after a heavy film they weren't sure they were ready to watch. I stayed seated for a long moment, hands folded in my lap, listening to the scrape of chairs, the murmur of voices, the shuffle of feet. Cameras flashed briefly before being ushered out. Somewhere behind me, a reporter whispered my name. But I didn't turn around. I was watching Oliver. He stood between two officers, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't look back at me, not once. It was as if by refusing to meet my gaze, he could preserve some final illusion of control. 7 years in prison, a lifetime ban from medicine, public disgrace. It wasn't enough to undo what he'd done, but it was enough to stop him from ever doing it again, and that mattered. When he disappeared through the side door, something inside me finally loosened. Not snapped, not broke, loosened, like a knot that had been pulled tight for years and was only now beginning to give. The weeks after the trial were strangely quiet. No more interrogations, no more court dates, no more headlines screaming my pain across front pages. Just silence. At first, that silence frightened me. I'd lived so long inside tension, waiting for the next pain, the next lie, the next explanation, that calm felt unfamiliar, almost unsafe. But slowly, I learned how to breathe inside it. My follow-up appointments became routine. Blood work stabilized. Imaging showed no progression. The oncologist spoke carefully, but optimistically. "The risk has retreated," she said during one appointment. "You'll need long-term monitoring, but your body is responding well." For the first time in years, my body felt like it belonged to me again. Not something I had to apologize for, not something I had to explain away. Mine. Sophie moved out of the flat Oliver had bought her and returned to her parents' home with the children. She gave a full statement to the police and cooperated completely. Once, months later, she sent me a letter. I didn't open it straight away. When I finally did, it was short, messy handwriting, tear-stained paper. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't defend herself. She simply wrote, "I didn't know who he really was. I see now that neither of us did. I'm sorry for the pain my silence caused you." I folded the letter and put it away. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give yet, but understanding had begun to grow. The adoption process took longer than I expected. Forms, interviews, home checks, psychological evaluations. I answered every question honestly, even the ones that reopened wounds. "Why do you want to adopt?" one caseworker asked gently. I thought a moment. "Because I have love to give," I said, "and because I know what it means to survive loss." That was the truth. 6 months later, Lily walked into my life holding a small backpack and a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. She was 5, quiet, watchful. The first night, she slept curled tightly on the edge of the bed, Rabbit clutched to her chest like a shield. I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, feeling something unfamiliar and powerful settle into my bones. Purpose. The first time she called me Mom, It was an accident. She spilled juice on the floor, panicked, then looked up at me with wide eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," she blurted. Then she froze. We froze too. We stared at each other for a second, and then she smiled, tentative, but hopeful. I smiled back. "Yes," I said softly. "That's okay." Jonathan, Dr. Reed, never pushed his way into my life. He checked in. He listened. He waited. Over time, friendship formed naturally, built on honesty and shared respect rather than urgency or rescue. He never treated me like something broken, never spoke to me like a patient outside the clinic. One evening, as Lily colored at the kitchen table, he stood beside me, watching her with a quiet smile. "She's lucky," he said. I shook my head. "No," I replied, "I am." A year after the verdict, I stood on the balcony of my flat, city lights glowing below like a scattering of second chances. I thought about the woman I'd been before, the one who ignored her intuition, who trusted reassurance over truth, who believed love meant silence. And I wished I could reach back through time and tell her one thing. Listen to yourself. Always. Pain is not normal just because someone says it is. Love does not require blindness. Trust should never cost you your body. Oliver tried to erase my future so he could build his own without me. He failed. Because ruin, I learned, is sometimes just the ground being cleared for something real to grow. I didn't get the life I planned. I got a better one, built on truth, courage, and the fierce protection of my own voice. And if my story does anything at all, I hope it reminds you of this. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Your intuition is not weakness, it's survival. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, share it. And remember, you are allowed to choose yourself. Always.